the keg stand. All right, so this is an interesting story. After winning Tennessee last night, winning the national title, saw this from David Teal, the conferences who won national titles this year. Pac-12 and the SEC winning 8, the ACC and the Big 12 winning 7, the Big 10 had 3, and the Big East won once. Harvard winning in fencing, Jacksonville State bowling, and Denver won the men's hockey with the championships too. Now, I started thinking about the Big 12 6 or 7. OU softball, and you had UT volleyball, University of Texas rowing. What were the other ones? I don't know if somebody won an indoor track. I don't think so. Maybe I'm wrong there. But I can't think of I looked at, by the way, going to the NCAA.com website and trying to figure that out, or if you Google Big 12 national titles 23-24, they take you to like the basketball tournament or something of that nature. But there we are, the breakdown, winning. Oh, TCU won the men's tennis title.
Yeah, I would like to see someone from not the Ivy League win fencing. It's been too long that those snobs have dominated the fencing world. You know, we need a more blue-collar fencing champion. Where are you, Wyoming or Colorado School of Mines, when it comes to fencing? Let's get with a program and knock them off their high horse.
Now you're making me want to go back and look at all the last 15 or 20 fencing national champions, but I'm about to probably do that. So, hello, Craig.
Hello. I have no idea off the top of my head who won all these championships. That'd be something to look up before the show, but I'm looking for an outlet that maybe has those listed, and I don't see anything. But, I have no idea off the top of my head where all the championships were, the main ones you mentioned, but I just quite simply don't follow closely enough on swimming and diving or whatever else they might have been. I mean, there's meat judging. I don't think that's NCAA sanctioned, but Texas Tech, and I know others have dabbled with that, but – yeah, I have no idea.
Kansas State won meat judging this year, by the way.
Who did?
Kansas State did.
Okay.
Thanks to the Sickos Committee.
Well, Baylor won acrobatics and tumbling. I'm not sure that's an NCAA yet, so I'm not sure. So that's not one. So I did reach out to David Teal, send him a direct message or a text, to try to find out who they were, just because I was curious. But you go to the NCAA website and go down every single sport, and I could find just 3. But bottom line is, there we are with the teams that have won national titles, the SEC and also the Pac-12. They haul in a lot of them with Stanford, UCLA, and others when it comes to sports that are how you also win Olympic games, too.
Well, that'll be awesome news for the ACC and Big Ten, with Stanford and UCLA and that going there. By the way, I just looked up the fencing champions. Okay. Here are the fencing dynasties. Harvard, Notre Dame won 6 out of 10. Notre Dame's good. Columbia, another Ivy League school. Penn State, Princeton, Ohio State, Harvard, and St. John's are the only teams to ever win fencing national championships since 1990 when it became officially sanctioned. So
all right, St. John's.
It's a pretty small little group, and St. John's is the upstart of all that.
Anytime I hear of St. John's, I think of the basketball player Walter Berry and also Lou Carnesecca, who was their coach for many, many years. And now, who's the coach at St. John's? It's
Rick Pitino.
Rick Pitino with his start there.
Well, here we go. I mean, it probably would have been helpful to look that up for the show. Oklahoma State won cross country on the men's side. So we're
be pissed.
Unintentionally leaving out teams that we probably should be mentioning because we didn't look it up. But there's a bunch of them, and it would be nice to have them all in one place, just to have them kind of there for the ability to, I don't know, an exercise like this to just kind of reel them off. But there doesn't seem to be a centrally located place. I'd have to just manually look through every single sport. But congrats to Oklahoma State on that title as well, and K-State on meat judging and so on and so forth.
Yep, and TCU men's tennis, et cetera, as we mentioned. We will have, Craig will do Off the Radar, get into the College Baseball World Series, the Stanley Cup Finals, and much more. We'll do that at 4:45 today.
Yeah, I'll get into Stanley Cup Finals, and I can mention the College World Series, but I don't think we're taking away anything by mentioning that as we're mentioning NCAA championships. So that was the big to-do last night, along with the Stanley Cup. Obviously, we're not going to lead off with hockey, but I don't have any problem mentioning congrats to Tennessee on their win over Texas A&M last night. I know that there's plenty of people who are not happy about that result, plenty of people who don't like seeing Tony Vitello hoist the national championship trophy, like Paul raises his hand. Plenty of people who were elated to see A&M fall short once again, particularly those in Austin, I'd imagine. But what a game that was. Tennessee looked like they were going to blow that open, and A&M scratched and clawed back into it. And I just thought that was an excellent final series. Kudos to the Vols for being able to drop game number 1 and then go win 2 in a row to win a national title. That's a lot of pressure, and they did that, and they were rewarded for that. And it's amazing what he's done with that Tennessee baseball program, and I guess now a lot of eyes are on Austin, Texas to see what move they make. Schlossnagle had the big, talking point, quotable in the postgame press conference, getting mad at a student reporter for asking about the Texas vacancy, which I can understand in that moment, but obviously that was just a bad night for him. I mean, and the thing about that, too, is people need to understand you don't ask that. There's no other time to ask him that. That is the time to ask him that because you don't have any more media with the guy. So that's actually the reporter doing his job, his or her job, by asking that. I understand, though, the sentiment of they just lost. What's he going to say? And I totally get that. But anybody that's getting on the reporter, there are a lot, especially young reporters, but reporters all over the spectrum that do stuff just simply look at me no matter what and have no regard for anything else. I don't think that was the intention last night. I think that was just asking the obvious question because of Schlossnagle's history. Now, granted, you can ask Tony Vitello the same thing. He's also at TCU with Chris Del Conte. So there were connections there. But point being, that was obviously a story kind of looming in the background last night. But I thought college baseball had a terrific send-off, a great final game, and Tennessee was a great team. So was A&M. And part of me, it's hard to admit, I'm not anti-Aggie like a lot of people, but on the one hand, I am yep, that's about right. A&M falls. But on the other hand, it's man, that was a really good team. And part of me was, I don't know, hoping, but I wouldn't have been upset had A&M crossed that barrier and hoisted a trophy.
I mean, I wanted them to win. I did. I don't care. I wanted it to be a great series, and it was. I didn't mind that Tennessee won. They're a fiery group. A&M overcame a lot of adversity. Now, speaking about Schlossnagle, Kirk Bowles, who's now working for the Houston Chronicle after retiring with the States or being laid off, basically, saying that Texas A&M baseball coach Jim Schlossnagle deciding between UT job and staying with the Aggies. And Kirk wouldn't just throw that up there. So that's interesting. That was just posted about 20 minutes ago.
Well, his new coworker, Brent Zwerneman, has confirmed as much. And we know Brent doesn't just run with things, considering he's the guy who reported the story that shook up the college athletics world.
Forever.
And look, he's not meeting with Texas. He's meeting with A&M as they try to convince him to stay. So that's really at least if you're going to try to find the silver lining in that, that means he's going to A&M and saying, look, this is what they're saying they'll offer me. And I have very little doubt that A&M will say, yeah, sure, whatever, don't go there.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going. I mean, there's always that out there. But last night, what he said was all, and you see it from Max here, was all not a no.
Right.
It was all not a no, so that's out there, which means he at least have to consider it, and Chris Del Conte have a relationship. So ultimately, I think he'll stay at A&M because I don't think, outside of working with Chris Del Conte and being in a town that has more restaurant choices, the difference in finances and resources and ability to get to the College World Series is no different at either place right now.
Yeah,
it's apples and oranges outside of locale and athletic director.
He had a pretty strong response about leaving his family for the A&M job and all of that. I think, like you said, does he just want to go to live in Austin and prefer it there? Does he really, really want to work for Chris Del Conte? I mean, those are the things that will decide. It won't be money. It won't be the ability to get to the championship as proven. A&M was not far off from winning the national title. They were one win away. So you can't say, well, I can't win it here. I've got to have that extra at Texas? I mean, other than just wanting to live somewhere different, work for somebody different. Trev Alberts didn't hire him, so I can see where that's something that, maybe comes into play. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's a possibility that could go down, I'd imagine. And I think Brent and Kirk, at least Brent alluded to, that probably gets decided tonight. I don't know if that means we find out tonight or we find out tomorrow. But, yeah, I guess Tony Vitello's like, all right, I'm out of this thing. I'm going to go celebrate my natty and get all these millions that are going to be poured into my baseball program now because, yeah, it does seem like the bullseye is now directly on Jim Schlossnagle. So I said yesterday during a commercial break, the most Aggie thing ever would be to lose the national title game and then have Texas come and take your baseball coach. And I don't mean that as a slight to them. I just mean historically, they are so used to get kicked in the nuts. It seems like that would be like this stereotypical thing to happen, would it not?
Yeah,
I mean,
I saw a lot of this from UT fans on the timeline about whether they win or not tonight. It's great that we're inside their head. Because of just the speculation. That had nothing to do with the game.
No.
Tennessee, whoever scored first in each of the 3 games won the game. It's like you had to get out to an early start, and they did. I don't know what he's going to do. A&M's got a great baseball field. They still need to do more. They've raised money to do more, and then it's just a matter of what his gut tells him to do when it comes to staying at A&M, and then also what the job is at Texas.
And look, with the equivalency scholarships likely going away here in the next couple of years, schools like A&M, again, those advantages, again, they're all going to be the same. They're in the same conference. There's going to be a bunch of money. The SEC is already making, with some of their extra money, like, okay, what's the next thing that we can make more money than everybody else on? Baseball's on Greg Sankey's list. So, again, it's not Big 12 to SEC or SEC, or one to the other, it is, do you want to work for Trev Alberts and stay in College Station, this job you very emotionally said you left your family and all those different things to do, or do you want to live in Austin and work for a guy that you like? Those are the two things.
And who you know.
Yeah, nothing else is different. Facility's not going to be different. Nothing's going to, ability to make it to the championship, not different. None of that's different other than your boss in the city.
To our knowledge and based on what I was reading, I think A&M is actually further along in facilities, although Texas will
their baseball field is
make
amazing.
over all of that. They're going to do all that in time, so that's not going to be a concern either. But, very interesting story coming out of last night. And for the college baseball reporters out there, which I don't know how many there are, there's Kendall Rogers and a ton of other guys, but they're eating good these last few days, and now nationally you have this story to track for at least another 24, 48 hours or so.
You could follow those who follow Texas and A&M, or those reporters, columnists around the state of Texas who cover both of them. But Kendall Rogers is an alpha when it comes to covering baseball, and he's the one on the morning that Baylor had already made the decision to hire Mitch Thompson. When I texted him about running and I saw Mitch Thompson, and I texted him and he said, call me. He knew that was a done deal, which gave me even one more source for me to go with the story that he was going to be the head coach at Baylor. He's the best when it comes to covering the national picture of college baseball. Now, here's an interesting note, and this is debate city here. The toughest places to play, the top 25 toughest stadiums in college football to play. There's the top 10. Kyle Field, Memorial Stadium, which is Alabama. Then you have Tiger Stadium, LSU. Ohio Stadium, Ohio State. Did I just take something from you?
No, for clarification, this is for the video game coming out.
EA Sports.
Yeah.
Sanford Stadium, Georgia. And then you have Penn State. Then you have Wisconsin. And then Oklahoma, Florida State, and Florida. Those are the top 10. Now, I would like to know, and I did look this up. I actually did my homework on this one. A&M's atmosphere, the setting, all of that may be as good as anywhere in the country, if not the best. But they're not dominant at home. Their record at home is probably a little bit, I don't know, I'm not saying above 500. They're good there. They've won big games there. But I would have thought LSU. That's the first place I would have thought of was LSU.
Yeah. Also, the amount of homemade liquor that runs through a stadium is much higher in Baton Rouge than it is in Kyle Field. I've been to we've been to several places. There's places we haven't been to. I can't wait to get to some. The top 10 in any order doesn't bother me at all.
Right.
Like I think you could, depending on the year, shake it up. Like Kyle Field, I think checks every box all the time, and it's probably because Kyle Field is never, even when the Aggies are very mediocre, it's still a very loud place to be. Like they don't check out, and so that helps. But my bigger problem with the list was when we get deeper into the top 25, and you get down to a place like Williams-Brice Stadium in South Carolina, which for the entirety of South Carolina's lifetime has not been hard for anyone to win there. Everyone wins there. It's like NBA players banging Madonna in the 90s. They all went there. They all won. They all did it.
Or Kardashian in the 2020s.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Like, Williams-Brice Stadium above the Big House?
Yeah.
Above DKR? Above Notre Dame? Come on, guys.
Well, it's debatable, as you can tell. But, Craig, anyone that you think of has – and there's a difference between home field advantage and atmosphere. Atmosphere can lead the home field advantage because there's some places that just have a great show. Like BYU is a great place and very good. I don't know their home record, but we've heard all about what BYU does. But I don't – the better teams – what are you huffing about?
I'm just sitting
I thought you were like I was dragging on too long. The better teams who win – also then have the best home field records. And so I don't know, in that list there's some alphas and there's also some that maybe aren't quite that way. Who would you say, Craig, is in your opinion, a couple of schools that have the best home field advantage?
I'd say LSU is number one as far as I'm concerned. I mean, Kyle Field's a great atmosphere, but, I don't think it's LSU level. I think at its very best with Johnny Football running the show that, it's got an argument to be, but, year in, year out, no matter how good the team is or not, as long as they're, sitting there with a pulse, give me Baton Rouge at night over any other atmosphere in college football. So I think Tiger Stadium should be number one. Some of these other places, I can't say for sure. I don't really have enough of a grasp, and I don't think everybody in the country who's arguing about this right now has been to all of these places to really have a great idea. We've all watched the same things on TV, but I do think for those that have probably been to more places, there's value in knowing the ins and outs and more of the details surrounding it all. I think in terms of, A&M, I'd have them a bit lower, and I'd have LSU at number one. I think Alabama belongs up there near the top. It seems like a pretty special place to play in. You're going to get a lot of the SEC schools because that's where a lot of the biggest stadiums and obviously some of the most passionate fan bases are as well. But there wasn't necessarily anything outside of the A&M at number one that jumped out like in a major way to me. Now that you mentioned South Carolina, unless we're just missing something and there's just something really special about playing there, I've never heard that in my life. Not once have I ever heard about, we got to go play at South Carolina this week. And granted, I don't do an all-SEC podcast, but I listen to some of them, and I don't think I've ever heard them say that. So I don't know where that comes into play. Maybe I'm just missing the boat on that. But beyond that, you can get into an argument about any one of these numbers and say this team should be higher than this team. I do think in terms of the Big 12, I notice on here now the only teams in that top 25 would be, let's see. Utah at 18, and they seem like they do have a pretty tough place to play when I've read about them. But I'd say, where's Oklahoma State?
Yeah, where's Boone Pickens?
All right, here's a stat. Thank you for bringing them up. This is from College Football Report from 247. Georgia, since 2020, again, this is a short time period, they're 22-0. That's pretty good. Alabama, 25-1. Oregon's 21-1. Clemson's 24-2. These are teams that have won. Ohio State is 5th. Utah is 20-2. Oklahoma State 7th at 23-3. And yes, that is a difficult place to play.
And they don't, when you beat Oklahoma State at T. Boone Pickens, outside of, most of the time it's at, oh, crap, we just did that. I would say Iowa State's got a great atmosphere. They're just not like if you're going to,
especially a night game.
Yeah, especially a night game. I think they've been left out. I like half this list. 12 of the 16 SEC teams are on there, and I'm not sure that South Carolina and Arkansas, even though Arkansas has a really cool stadium,
they
really cool, but they don't belong on the list as the top 25. And I'll throw in there if you're going to put South Carolina at 14 or 15, and I know that like they haven't won in forever, but. Smokey, where's Lincoln on this?
Well, that's an environment. That's an atmosphere. They haven't won a lot of home games because they haven't won a lot of games.
Neither has South Carolina.
No, I get it.
So, like, if that's gonna not be a factor in it, then maybe throw some history on it. And like, that's the thing. If South Carolina's on this list at all, like Mississippi State's at number 25, they've got the cowbells. I get that, but like, if you're not gonna put Oklahoma State on here. And you're not going to, like, take into the fact of winning anything historically ever. South Carolina's never even won their conference.
Okay.
So, like, what are we talking about?
This is the other thing here. I'd say, if you're doing special circumstances, that would change the whole list up. Like BYU at night would be something that I think you'd have in here as well. I think the SEC bias in all of these rankings that we see now, that's why I don't even blink at most of them because, for one, they're far too overdone. I mean, and two, here's a reminder for everybody getting worked up. It's a freaking video game.
Yeah.
It's a video game with their list. And congratulations to EA Sports on the incredible amount of free advertising you've created this entire summer because needy college football content creators have to have something to talk about. And if realignment doesn't make sense, then it's the video game and you get worked up. And we just know in general, people get worked up over lists. Like, that just throw a list out there doesn't even need to make sense.
Yeah.
Most of them don't, and people will just react to them. It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. It's like throwing bread in a koi pond. Of just like they flock to it, man. And so we have to remind ourselves. All I'm saying is that's part of the beauty of college athletics and college fandom. But I've seen a few people today getting really worked up over the EA Sports video game rankings which, by the way, all
says
it is.
Can be changed, determined based on now.
They've already said. They've already said it's not a final list, so they even have seen some of this and will probably change it, but they're getting a lot of free advertising.
Yeah, the thing I think that fired me up about it the most was this is a factor when you're playing the game, right?
Sure, yeah.
So it's not when they say toughest places to play, like it is actually going to affect the gameplay. And they have done such a great job, and you heard all this stuff. We'll talk to Matt Brown about it, but of really saying, yes, the quarterback's going to get tired. Guys are going to get fatigued. There's going to be realistic consequences to things, and the crowd's going to affect the game. And when you tell me the South Carolina crowd has affected a game at any point in their life, I just don't believe you.
LSU and A&M, by the way, have the same home record since 2020. They're both 20-5, which is a pretty damn good record.
But by the way, Action Network put this one up. This is all those teams on the top 10 against the spread at home.
Okay.
Since 2014.
Should against the spread matter?
No,
you either win or you don't, right?
But it is an interesting little metric because there are some teams like, look, I'll admit, Florida State, since 2014, until a year ago, the Doak was kind of a sad place to be. Ben Hill Griffin's a very sad place to be right now. So not everybody on this list has had a great run in the last decade. Now, there's some that are always great. Like, that's why A&M and LSU and Alabama are in the top three. Ohio State, Penn State, Georgia, they're always good. Like, always going to be good atmospheres.
I think of Penn State more so for, like, whiteouts at night and stuff than I do for just regular football games. But that's okay. I mean, that's one I'd kind of side-eye a little bit, but maybe that's the you have to experience it type of thing. But go on, Paul.
They're not a part of as far as home record in the last 4 or 5 years, they're not even on the list.
Wisconsin has Jumper Camp Randall is like, it's a great environment. All those are great. Oklahoma, Gaylord Family Stadium, dear God, do not expect to go in there and have a good time if you're not, Boomer Sooner. So all that's, quantitative stuff over the years. I think it's just when you get, if you want to put South Carolina on the list, fine. But over Michigan?
Yeah.
Over the big house?
Here's Cornelio, the betting lines, who gives a blank, you win or you lose. And that, Georgia's got an X next to it. They've dominated everybody in the last few years as far as their home field advantage.
Yeah, I think that's just another way to try to spin something to make it more unique for your own tweet, rather than just copy and pasting or typing it all out when the graphic just said, I saw a bunch of people, it's like the graphic says all these. You don't need to type them manually what it already says. But regardless, not Twitter police, but you're right, Emilio, who gives about the lines, because I think it's pretty clear in the win-loss record. So I'm right there with you on that, but we know how much of a push that industry has made into college. So now, and just sports in general, so now everything's got the well, with the spread, it's this and it's that, and that now gets constantly mentioned. But look, it's something that I look forward to hearing folks who have been to, like, who are beat reporters that have been there, like, covering games. I'm sure there's a lot of those folks that have shared their thoughts today, and I'm sure that's been some good fodder as well. But like I said, EA's gotten a ton of free advertising. If I'm them, I'm doing like the everyday list of, here's our top 10 this, and here's our top 10 that.
I think that's what they have planned out. Yeah,
that's what they have planned, and that's brilliant, because obviously you're looking at the reaction to this, but you do have to remind yourself of, it's the video game rankings. It's not real life.
It's like best views, like Colorado and Air Force Academy. Dundee's LSU 1, Penn State 2, Alabama 3, 4 through 10 you could mix and match. Oklahoma at 8 is probably about right, and we was talking about
with the against the spread thing, though. You can look at it like it's kind of more of a, did the team do what it was supposed to do, the team? Yeah. And then beyond that, if they have a ridiculous record against the spread, then the crowd made an extra difference.
No, that's true.
That's fair,
That's a very good point. And there are some check marks there. What, LSU, Penn State, Oklahoma, and am I missing one there?
No, they all have the winning record. They're
they're the ones that have.
Or
the
they're in
check
the
mark.
right spot based on where they.
All right. Paxton goes, what about Lincoln? Again, Lincoln has not been a home field advantage. Used to be as good as anybody. The atmosphere and environment is one thing, but that is completely different. All right. So, again, the last thing I saw, and I want to go back to the Jim Schlossnagle, as we mentioned that it is apparently just some sort of decision that needs to be made by sometime by the end of the day on A&M and or Texas, which is just another, here we go with this. And I just can't even imagine the reaction if, in fact, he was to leave for Austin, if you're A&M fans who right now feel like, man, we were so close. And they had a great baseball team, too, but Tennessee just got hot all year long. 60 wins, a great run for them.
Yeah, I would hate to be an A&M fan, and you're coming off of a loss last night, and now you're having to deal with this. I mean, so it's a rough 24, 48 hours for them. It sounds like there will be some closure soon, but that could also be bad news for you. Good news is they've got everything you want for a baseball program. They might not just have that extra part of the relationship that Jim Schlossnagle's after, as far as, close ties to his AD or whatever the case may be. And who knows in his personal life, what could sway him one way or the other. But it is a huge decision. It's going to have a massive impact in college baseball on both programs, if he were to leave. And if not, then Texas turns somewhere else. And so, that's going to be a very interesting outcome for sure. And if he were to leave, I mean, my goodness, that would just be you're outs away from a national championship, one win away, and you turn around and go to the rival as they enter the SEC. That would just be crazy.
Yeah, and the day that they're playing for the national title, when that story pops, because it's been out there. They've known about that for about two weeks, and for that to come down on the day.
Well,
there's usually like a common courtesy, unwritten rule.
It's not a coincidence.
No, it's not. It's
not
absolutely,
a coincidence at all.
And absolutely the timing.
No, Also, in a game where it got so exciting in the ninth inning because the closer for Tennessee either threw the nastiest fastball you've ever seen or to the backstop. It was unhittable it was unhittable either way. It was either unhittable over the middle of the plate or it was unhittable over everyone's head.
Yeah, it was dramatic.
Nuke Lelouch, if I've ever seen it.
6-1, and then all of a sudden you're talking about it. You get winning runs at the plate for A&M. Now, Utah, I have this one, Jack, and then we'll break and come back with our first guest, the voice of KU football. Utah, remember, it seemed like they came to the Big 12 scratching and clawing and holding on to the doorknobs. At least that's kind of the feeling that sometimes you got. Here's the summer edition for the University of Utah magazine. I thought this was pretty cool. It's all about the Big 12. It's all about learning the new schools, some who are familiar, and then also who they're going to be playing when it comes to football, basketball, baseball, other sporting venues. But it's kind of a history, like a synopsis of the Utah entering the Big 12, which is official July the 1st. I thought that was really cool for a school you thought that maybe Arizona State was probably the last one to bend. But there they are with that. I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, I mean, it's where they're going. It's where they're playing. So might as well embrace it. And I do think that there was not a desire on the part of any of those schools to join the Big 12. I don't think that's saying anything. Like, I feel sometimes it's like, tell us you want us. Please tell us how much you love us and tell us how much you want to be a part of our group. And, just not everybody feels that way. And if the Big 12 fizzled out last summer as opposed to the Pac-12 and teams were breaking off, like I'm sure Iowa State would have preferred to stay in the Big 12 versus going and joining the, whatever, CUSA or something like that. And CUSA fans would be like, Iowa State don't want to be here. Well, yeah, they wanted to be in the Big 12. So I think we've got to be understanding of that, especially for a school in Utah that just got there relatively recently by historical standards. They had this long trudge up, just like a BYU, just like a Houston, just like a TCU, just like a Cincinnati. And they found their spot where they're surrounded by all these like-minded, geographically similar schools, and that's just plucked away when they're doing really well. So that's a tough pill to swallow for everybody involved. But I never for a second thought that, like, not wanting that as opposed to wanting what you already had was a slight on the Big 12. It's just they liked being in the pack. That's what they wanted and what they hoped for. And then when all that went the way that it did, it turned into just Twitter talk, and, you can take that for what it's worth, but I don't think that every Utah fan represents the entire fan base, nor does that carry over for any other fan base. So there are some mouthy Utah fans that definitely, butted heads with Big 12 fans online and kind of created this narrative, but I think there's plenty of them that are like, all right, let's go. Like, and what option do you have? It's not changing. I mean, maybe it changes in a few years and you end up going to a different conference ultimately. But for right now, you're in the Big 12, so you might as well embrace it and, get to know it a little bit and welcome Utah and welcome the rest of the new schools as well. So, that's cool. I like all the old school logos on there, and I'll try to see if that's online somewhere. I'd like to check that out.
I will find it. I'll have Utah send us a copy of it. Mark Harlan, of course, the AD, who I know for a fact had a lot of conversations with Mack Rhoades during that time period leading up to eventually the decision to make the decision to join the Big 12. When we come back,